Welcome to Introduction to Game Development. This is Computer Science 303 at Missouri State University. My name is Matthew, and I'll be showing you how to use UDK. And as always, I will preface this tutorial with the disclaimer that I am not an expert. And first off, let's go ahead and begin by getting our latest version of the map in there. So here's Lab 8, and this should be exactly where you are at the end of the last video. And I'll copy it over to our contents directory. Paste it and copy and replace. And as we open the editor here, I'll go ahead and introduce you to today's topic. Today we'll begin by finishing our light switch from last time, and then we'll learn also a bit about how to control cameras using a director track in Matinee. Now last time for our light switch we created our toggleable point light, we created a new material instance constant, we created a trigger to activate this light. If you made it all the way through the last video, you'll notice I had intended to adjust the vector parameter on our material instance constant within Kismet. But at the very end, I realized that they had removed that node from Kismet that I was looking for. Specifically, it was the Edit Material Vector Parameter node. It appears that this feature was removed from Kismet because it would cause some bugs when using level streaming where the values were persisting outside the level in unexpected ways. And so they've removed the feature from Kismet altogether. That's perfectly fine though, and everything we've done so far is okay to use still, because I had really only planned to use that as an intermediary step before we do some fine controls of the material's color using Matinee. Now, however, Matinee is our only option for doing this. So let's go ahead and jump right in, and I'll load up our map. So this is Lab 8 we're working in. And just to remind you where we are, I'll go ahead and hit play. And as we come in, you can see we've made our new room. There's the new emissive light we've made over here in this left corner. And then we also created this light over here. And normally it has an emissive channel already running on it. But if we go up to our button here, we've already replaced it with a material instance constant, which is why it's darkened now. Now if we go up to our button here and I press E, our toggleable point light turns on, but nothing happens with material instance constant yet, so the material on the light itself is still the same. And I'll go ahead and turn that off now. So to begin with, if you don't have one of these material instance actors in here, I'll go ahead and delete it. If you don't have one in there, you can find it by just going to your content browser, actor classes, and then under uncategorized, you should see a material instance actor. And we'll take that and just drag it out there. It doesn't really matter where it is. I'll move it up a little bit and over so it's not in the way of anything. Okay, so there it is. And now we need to go in also in our content browser. We need to find that material instance constant that we created earlier. So depending on what you named it, I named mine flu mat const or something along those lines. So here it is right here. It's fluorescent light mat const. So this is the material instance constant that I created last time in my last video. And while I have that selected, right click on our material instance actor that we just brought into the world and go to its properties. And now we want to hit the green arrow here for the material instance that it's going to be affecting. So now it knows which material instance to use. And now, while we also have this material instance actor selected, we'll go into Kismet, and you can see if we go down here, here's our light switch right now. So this is trigger 3. Once it's used, it toggles the point light. That's the only thing this toggle node is doing. So now we need to also have it cue a Matinee sequence. And so for now, let's go ahead and just run it so that from out, we'll go to play. And now double click on the Matinee sequence and we'll have a fresh new Matinee interface to work with. Now in our fresh window here, let's go ahead and right click and add a new empty group. And we'll call this the light group. And within our new light group, right click it and select new vector material param track. This is essentially what we were wanting to adjust within Kismet earlier, but now we have a track for adjusting this over time. And we won't just simply be toggling it between two different values, but rather we'll be selecting different values for it, and it will interpolate a path from the RGB values being set to 0, 0, 0 to whatever we want them to be. And before we continue, you want to also make sure that it has the correct parameter name in here. If you remember when we looked at our parent material that we used for our material instance constant last time, we looked at the material editor and went down to the bottom right corner of it, and there was a node there set a parameter. And those are the things that we were able to change within Kismet or Matinee, which I indicated then. But if you don't remember the name of it, one of the things that you can do to access your parameters here in Matinee. So maybe I don't remember, or maybe I know the name has some combination of the word, light and color in it, but I'm not sure exactly where it is. If you write it in all lowercase letters, so I'll say LIGHTCOLR, so light color, no capitals. If I hit enter, then if it's able to find a parameter that matches that name, it will go ahead and capitalize it properly. So you saw the moment I hit enter, we had a capital L and a capital C. So it's matching the case of the lettering for the name of that parameter. And by the fact that we saw it changed those letters, we knew that it automatically found it on its own. If that's not working for you, if you can't remember the name of your parameter, I'll go ahead and delete it real quick. So in that case, we can go and back to our content browser, and I'll double click on our material instance constant, and within here you have all these different values here, but remember we had this parameter group here, and we have our light. This is where we set our RGB values to 0, 0, 0 and selected this light color here. But this is the parameter that we want to change, this light color. And so if I were to select this, I could right click it and it says copy selected properties to clipboard. And I can simply just copy that. And then while we're down here, I can just say paste, and there is the parameter as well. And just to make sure we do this right, there we go. So you can normally find your parameters that way. I have not tested it that way, but that is another way to find your parameter names. And so now we'll go ahead and close this. Or actually, sorry, we should not close this yet. We haven't actually created our key events yet. So at 0, 0, 0, at the very first moment of our Matinee sequence, while we have material parameter selected, we'll add a key event there. And then wherever we want the value to be changed, so let's say, let's make this like a 2.5 second thing here. The entire Matinee sequence, we'll make it as 2.5 minutes. And so right there at 2.5 seconds, rather, I'm sorry, we'll go ahead and add another key event, and I'll zoom out here and we'll bring the red bar back down, so the end of the sequence will happen right afterwards. Now we haven't actually set any values yet. We just set 2 moments in time that we want it to use whatever values that we're going to set for it. Now here's an important feature of the material parameter track, and that's if you look on the edge of your track here, there's a little box. If you select that, it turns on our graphing editor up here on top. Now this graphing editor, you're not going to see anything quite yet, just because basically our values at time 0 is RGB values of 0, 0, 0, and our values at time 2 seconds and 2.5 seconds is also 0, 0, 0 for RGB values. We can isolate the RGB channels with these blocks right here under light vector material param. So if you deselect green and blue, so that only the red is showing, you see one line here with a little red highlight around each of these key moments here. And likewise, we can turn off that and hit the green, and now you see one line just for the green track. And deselecting that and selecting blue, you see one line for the blue track. Now we want to be able to change the values. Right now it's just interpolating from 0 to 0, so it's essentially no interpolation at all, which is why it's just a straight line right across. It's just a linear interpolation. What we can do is, now while we have the blue selected, we'll right click on that key moment and then set value. And for this we'll use the value 3. Right away you can see we have a line that curves up here now. So it's going, so the blue channel is going from 0 to 3 in 2.5 seconds. We deselect the blue, select the green, and we'll right click there, and we'll set that to a value of 2. And now deselect the green and select the red, and we'll set the value to 1. Now, if you don't remember, those were the values, the default values for the RGB channels on our original parent material that we made our material instance constant out of. So a material instance constant, we set all those values to 0, but in Matinee, we're going to interpolate the values back up to what they were. And if you select R, G, and B channels all together, you can see that it's interpolating them simultaneously to 3 different values. And so we have those set, we have the parameter name set, we have everything working now. Let's go ahead and test it. I'll go ahead and close this. Or actually, before I do, there we go. And you can see the light is changing colors as we move through our little Matinee sequence here. So I'll close that, and close that. So now as I come in and play, so here's our button, and there comes the light on. And you know, it just kind of slowly curved up to that. Let's get that to a point to where we can actually see it and play with it back and forth with reverse as well. So let's go back to our Matinee sequence. It was this one. And here we go. And so we don't necessarily want it to change that slowly, right? Maybe we want a more natural flicker to how the light looks. And so if we want to do that, we can add several more key moments. So let's say at half a second, we'll add a key. At 1 second, we'll add a key. And at 1.5 seconds, we'll add a key. There we go. And at 2 seconds, we'll add a key. Actually, no, we'll leave it just these 3 here in the middle. And then for each of these values, so let's do the same values for each of these channels that we had before. And let's see here. And so set value to 1. This is our red channel. Oh, and we should probably do some key moments on either sides of these as well. So I'll do a key moment here, and a key moment here on either side of that. And again on either side of this one. And then again on either side here. You can be more precise with these timings if you like. It's going to be so quick though, I don't know that will really matter too much. And so for each of the middles of these groups of 3, we'll go ahead and set our values to the higher numbers. So the red channel back up to 1 again. And right here as well. Set the value back up to 1. And now, turning off the red channel, we'll go to green. And we want each of these values to be at 2. Set value to 2. And set value to 2 again. And now turning off the green channel, we'll go just to the blue. Or sorry, just to the blue rather. There we go. And so for each of these middle key events, set the value to 3. There we go. And so now if I turn on all 3 channels, you can see that it's going to basically do a quick spike in the values, then back down, quick spike, back down, quick spike, and back down. And we use these extra key events on either side so it knew what value it was rising up from, so we could choose basically how quickly it was going to interpolate. If we didn't have this key event before the first spike, it would have slowly interpolated up to that value. Instead, it's doing a linear interpolation from 0 to 0 up that point this time, and then it shoots up to that value we wanted. Something else that's interesting as well, if you notice whenever you select any of these values, you get this line across the top, and that's essentially the tangent line there. If you're familiar with calculus, it's like what the derivative would be at that point. So if you want to change the slope of the curve at any given point, you can change this tangent angle here. So say maybe we want a slightly sharper curve where it's going to shoot up faster than normal. We can set that tangent curve to be a little bit higher. And so now we have that, and let's go ahead and test it real quick. So here we are in the game. We come over, we press our button, and we can see it flashing on. There it goes. And we haven't done anything with that our matinee sequence to allow it to go in reverse yet, but we have a flicker on there at least. So now going back to Kismet, we have our matinee sequence here. Now we can do a few things to make this a little bit better for us. One second. Now, what we really want it to do is be able to switch whether it's playing the matinee in forward or reverse, depending on which direction it's going. And right now we just have a simple toggle, so it doesn't necessarily know what it doesn't necessarily do anything differently whenever we're turning it on or off. And we don't necessarily want to use this sequence of going from the toggle directly to the matinee, because you'll notice the light had turned on before the material had actually lit up completely. And so one way that we could do this, let's go ahead and just disconnect, hold shift, and click on these connectors here. And now I can't really move these while I'm recording the video, but for the way we have this here, I'll go ahead and go from here. Let's say we need a switch. So if we right click and go to New Action, Switch, and not a random switch but a regular switch. And then while this is selected, you see there's only one link on there, so it's only switching between one thing, so it's not really much of a switch yet until we go down to our properties here, and under link count we'll select 2. There we go. And do we want this to loop? We'll say yes. So now whenever we use the trigger, it will activate this switch, and then the switch, let's go ahead and have it so that link 1 goes to the play and link 2 goes to reverse. And let's see here. We're not using the toggle yet, but for now, let's go ahead and from the matinee, from completed, we'll have it go to turn on, and from reversed, we'll go to turn off. We can do a little bit more with that, but this should work for now. And so now we have a button that will go to the switch. It'll use an index of 2 different numbers that it'll loop through to either play the matinee or reverse the matinee sequence that will turn on the material alpha channels up to 3, 2, and 1 like we wanted, or turn them all back down to 0. And as it completes, it will either turn on or off the toggle light that we've created. So now let's go ahead and test it real quick. And as we come in, you can see there's the light. We hit the button, it turns on, or it should. There it goes. And so it flickered, and then as soon as it came on, the light toggled on. But as long as the light is supposedly supposed to be coming from this emissive material, let's go ahead and make this a little more realistic. So right now we have it so where it's just toggling the point light after the matinee sequence has gone off. Instead, let's actually toggle the light within an event track in our matinee sequence. And so now we can go to our matinee sequence, and now we need to add a new track. So in the light track, we're going to right click, add new event track. Let's see, where is it? There we go. Add new event track. And let's see here. Now we want to make sure that at any of these moments when the light should be turning off, the point light will be toggled off. So this should be an off point, right? So we'll go ahead and add a key event. And since we want this to be able to work both forwards and backwards, we don't want to use just off and on events, but rather a toggle event. So we'll just say, call this event toggle. Okay. And then we'll toggle it here. So add another key event there. Toggle. And here another event. Again, call it toggle. You could add as many different names as you want to, but we just want one node connecting off the end of our matinee sequence that can actually toggle that point light on and off. So we're going to name them all the same, so we don't have to do multiple connections. Bring it here again. We have another toggle. We don't need to worry so much about the ends, since we're using a completed and reversed node to actually turn it off and on completely. We just want the toggle to flip it on and off as we're going. So there's one more toggle. So now we have an event track where it's toggling the light on and off at all these points when it's actually supposedly flickering. Supposed to be flickering, rather. And now we'll go ahead and close that. And then under Kismet, we can see we have... Oh, where is it? Here it is. So here is our new matinee sequence, and we have a new node on the right side here called toggle. And so we will connect that over to the toggle input on our toggle node. And so now let's take a look at that. As we come in, we can hit the button and see the light flickering on. Oh, there it goes. Okay. And maybe we want that last interpolation to be a little slower, or a little faster rather. And so if we do that, we can, under our material param track, we bring our bar closer over, and we'll say to like right there. And we'll add a key event, and see there it is, defaulted at 0, and it's coming up at that angle here. And now let's make these a slightly less parabolic curve. There we go. Just by changing our tangent angles on each of those. And so now we can go ahead and close this, and we'll take a look. Notice we haven't had to actually build anything yet. So we hit E, it comes on, boom, there. Now we have a more realistic light with a flicker on there. Now, an important thing to note here is, I'll go ahead and close this plane editor window, is that the material instance parameter track that we're using in Matinee is only really affecting this material instance actor, which itself is tied to just that material instance constant that we created. If we had that material instance constant being used on multiple static meshes, then it would affect all of those static meshes simultaneously. So now that we have everything set up for this one light, if we go ahead and right click and copy it, or you can just shift and drag it, I'll go ahead and paste it here. So we get an extra light right there, right? And we'll probably have to rebuild lighting before it works properly. I'll move it down just a little bit so it's lined up with our previous light. And also, I'll leave this alone for now so you can see it without. And let's see here. Let's go ahead and build all real quick. And I'll pause it. Or it's not accepting my pause. There we go. Okay. Close and close. Now if I were to, you can see it lit up there since it's built the lighting. Now if I played it, and I walk up, and I hit my button, it's automatically turned on the light on both of the lights there. The material on both of those lights. But we've only actually got that one point light, so if we were to have a smaller radius on this, we wouldn't actually see a light radius around this other static mesh that we have. So if we go ahead and just make another point light, I'll copy and paste it. Paste here. So there's another toggleable point light, just copying the one we had. And then while this is selected, go back into our Kismet. Notice we only have the original point light there. Now if we right click and say new variable, okay, new object variable using point light toggleable 0. We'll go ahead and add that one. And we'll also connect this one into our target, so it'll be switching both lights now. And we'll close this and play. Oh, and we'll need to rebuild lighting. Just one moment on that. Alright, and play. As we come in, we can walk over, we hit the button on our light, both turn on, along with both toggleable point lights. So now we have fully working light switch here, which we can easily copy all over the place and have multiple lights operating off of one switch. I'll go ahead and close this. And so now let's go ahead and talk about how to set up moving cameras during matinee sequences and how to use a director track to be able to select between your cameras throughout a matinee sequence. We don't have a whole lot of time left, so we'll keep this one simple. In this case, let's go ahead and make a camera that will reorient towards these lights as they're turning on. And that way you don't have to try and catch it real quick in your field of view whenever you press the button on the far side of the room. One thing that we might want to do also is to make sure that this camera motion is independent of which direction our light matinee sequence is going. So if it's going forward, we want the camera to move the same as if it was going backwards. That is, we want the camera to reorient towards those lights, watch them change, and then watch the matinee sequence end. And so to do this, let's go ahead and first let's go ahead and put in a camera. And so go to your content browser, under actor classes, go to camera actor, and we'll just drag one out. And while it's selected, go ahead and click the eye, and that will put it in our perspective. So now as we move, this will be the starting position of the camera. And I'll have it here so it's looking right at our backs when we hit the button. And so there is our position. I'll select the eye again, back away, and there's our camera. Okay. And so now let's go ahead and go into Kismet. We want this to be a separate matinee sequence, different from our light changing track. So let's go ahead and right click and say new matinee and double click it. Now while you're inside our matinee window here, right click and we want to say add new camera group. And let's make sure we have, actually cancel this and make sure we have our camera selected. Okay, we have our camera selected in the window. So right click and new camera group. And we'll call this room 2 cam. So there is our room 2 camera. You get two different tracks in any camera group, that's being movement and field of view angle. I normally just use the movement one and then do my zoom ins and zoom outs with just movements of the camera rather than actually changing the field of view. But you have that option for yourself as well. And then also we're going to right click and say new director group. Now you can only ever have one director group, and it's able to use any number of camera tracks, any camera groups that we put in there. And so what we want to do is, while we have our director group selected, we'll go ahead and, let's see, it's over 2.5 seconds that the event is occurring that we want to view. So let's bring this down just a little bit, down to say 3 seconds. And now we will go ahead and put a key event at about 1 second. Oh, actually, sorry. We'll under the directory group, we'll have a key event at the very beginning. And this is cut to group, and you can choose different things here. If you have multiple cameras in the level, we could choose different cameras that it might cut to. We only have one camera right now. So cut to group, room 2 cam. And so this is how long it's actually in that director group for the entire duration of this sequence, this matinee sequence. And now under movement, the movement track for our camera, we want to have a key event at around 1 second or so. And so now we're in that position, and we'll come over here. There we go. So you can see as soon as we selected that position, it put us in the view of the camera, and wherever you move, that's where our camera was moving to. And so now, from the beginning of our sequence, it's going to cut to this camera. It's going to quickly rotate over here and move over to the side to look at the lights, and then it'll finish. And so now let's go ahead and close this, since the director is actually looking at the room 2 camera now. And whenever we use the trigger, let's go ahead and have it do a play of that. We'll close this, and now we'll play. And then when we walk up to our button here, we'll hit it, and the camera should take over. Boom. There we go. And we could extend that out a little bit. So back to our new sequence here. So we want this to continue on. So let's make this a little bit longer. Let's make this a 4-second sequence. Let's see if that does it for us. And coming in, we walk over, hit our button, the camera takes over, light turns on, and it hangs out for a moment just to look at it, and there we go. So now we know how to do camera direction in Matinee. We'll do a little more with that later whenever we build a full cinematic. And we'll also need to be able to run that sequence in reverse as well. Okay, and we can do that in lab, but you have an idea of where to start now with camera motions and using the director track. And our light switch is fully working from what we began last time. Next time we're going to start working with AI, so I'll see you then.